I'm aware of the fact that at Canterbury Council now there's a great deal of emphasis on health and wellbeing, and I hope that my talk dovetails into that. In fact, on the front of the book it says, by way of subtitle, An Essential Guide for Healthy and Productive Living. And the title I pronounce Vint-Age, because I take the view, unlike some others, that once you reach a certain age, you are like a good wine, you only get better and better as the years go on, hence the red wine on the front cover, because that is the analogy. It is a worthwhile analogy because doctors will tell you that a little bit of red wine is good for you. And that is consistent with the theme of the book, that we ought to enjoy life, we ought to get out there, and we ought to be involved. In my real job as a solicitor, I wear a suit and a white shirt, but because I'm here today, I've worn a blue and white shirt, which I think is in keeping with certain things that are about to happen on the weekend. And I certainly hope that the Bulldogs get up. I will be there, and they will be my choice. I will be there in line with being active and involved in society, which again is what the book is about. I noticed on the way in that there's going to be a discussion conducted by the library on the subject of, is the book dead? That I'm sure will be very interesting. I certainly take the view that the book is not dead, should not be dead, and should be often read. And the reason, again, dovetails into what I'm saying in my book here. We need to be active physically and mentally, and we ought to do that as much as we can as the years go by. I write this book, notwithstanding the period of time I had in aged care, as a non-expert. I have no qualifications in health. What I write about is the experience I picked up from other board members who were better qualified than I. There were healthcare professionals, accountants, all sorts of people. But I will tell you in a moment, I developed certain concerns during those 20 years about the fact that the medical profession has given everybody in this room an extra 20 years of life. When I was born during the Second World War, people lasted until 65. Which was when the governments of those days gave you a pension. They didn't worry too much about it because everybody died the week before or the week after. It's not the concern now. Nowadays, the medical profession has given us another 20 years. We have a life expectancy, the third highest in the world, somewhere in the mid-80s for men and women, and going up. So what the medical profession hasn't done is given us a way to cope with those 20 years, and what society has tended to do is push people over 60 or 65 or whatever age you want to choose onto the periphery and say, you're not as important as you used to be. It's almost as though we had a use-by date on our forehead, and when we got to 65 or 60, the light lit up and we put those people to the side. That's not the way it is. It's not the way it should be. Because with modern medicine, we're as fit now at 85 as we were at 65. Provided we do the right things, provided we remain involved, and so on and so forth. Now, the foreword to this book is written by a real expert, John McCallum, who's the Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University, and I want to quote some of the things he says because they support the view I'm taking as a non-expert. One of the things he says, which echoes what I've just said, like a good wine, some things get better with age. That's us, everybody in here. And he mentions antiques, mature cheeses, great works of art, and people who age well. He then goes on to talk about the book and says expert evidence is used, celebrated or treated with a grain of salt, a fair amount of treating it with a grain of salt, let me tell you, and put in context of other less credentialed but longer standing wisdom. And at one or two places I do have a go at the so-called experts. And I've got two definitions of expert in the book. One is that an expert is one who knows more and more about less and less. And another is that an expert is a person who has made all the mistakes which can be made in a very narrow field. And what I'm trying to indicate there is that there is an expert as to your life. But it's not somebody with 10 degrees. It's you and you and you and you and you. You're the person who was born. You are the person who graduated from kindergarten to secondary school to whatever your life experiences are, parenting and what have you. And provided you involve yourselves in the right way, you're the best persons to make sure that that extra 20 years of life is productive for you in the way you want it to be. So I've broken the book up into chapters which spell out Vint-Age. There's a chapter on vigour, being vigorous, on intelligence, on doing things now, on time, on adapting, on goals, and on being eagles in our old age, with all that connotes. I thought I'd written the book with some care, and about halfway through the first chapter I quoted an authority, I don't know, with an expert, an authority anyway, that said you should indulge in sex 4 times a week. My wife misread it as though I was quoting myself on that topic, which caused some interesting discussions at home. The girl in the office who typed it had the same misunderstanding, which certainly led to some tittering in one corner of the office that day. So we can be as expert as we like, but we still make mistakes. The first chapter, as I've said, is about being vigorous. And vigorous to the extent of being assertive, not aggressive, but assertive in our old age, and making sure that we have the respect that we're entitled to. Who in this room knows the average age of a Nobel Prize winner? Anyone care to guess? It's about 70. About 70. So an example of that is Stephen Hawkins, the black hole Professor Stephen Hawkins, who's a paraplegic and has all sorts of medical problems. I refer to him because in this age where we have Doctor Who and all the youngies are talking about time travel and what have you, he comes out with a common sense suggestion that if time travel was possible, why aren't we invaded by thousands of people from the future? And the fact is we're not, and they're not, and he's right, and the youngies are wrong. And so on and so forth. I was recently interviewed on one of the radio stations, the one that Bob Rogers is on. And the interviewer made the point that Bob Rogers, who used to play the records when I was a child, is now 84. And he's still a leading disc jockey in the city of Sydney. A contemporary of his was John Laws, and John Laws, I believe, is back on the radio now. We can't get away from them, can we? But they're doing a very good job at an advanced age. So we ought remain vigorous. They are examples of people who remain not only physically vigorous, going to work and doing all the things they do against the odds as far as Professor Hawkins is concerned, but intellectually vigorous as well, being able to run high-rating television shows, being at the cutting edge of science. One of the things that more recently has come into vogue is the men's shed. We men tend to be less concerned about our health, less involved, less intelligent in many ways. So the men's shed is a very good development, and there's been a lot of publicity in that area lately. And there's one opening where I live. So we ought to remain vigorous in our old age and confident. A lot of what I'm talking about is remaining confident, maintaining a level of involvement in healthy and productive living, so that both we feel better and we're more involved, and those who we deal with treat us as the people entitled to the respect we're entitled to. The second chapter of the book is about intelligence, and there's been a lot of publicity recently about emotional intelligence as opposed to IQ. And really, what they say about emotional intelligence is no more than common sense. Good old-fashioned common sense. So all the old sayings, have a healthy mind in a healthy body, which is relevant to what we're talking about today. No use crying over spilt milk. They are relevant in this context. But there is a degree to which people tend to be bluffed as the years go by, and computers is one such. A lot of people don't keep up with computers. But when you think about it, we deal with computers every day. I just telephoned my office outside the library. There's a computer in the telephone. I have a computer, which I use in the library. I drove out here in my car. There's a computer in my car. The library couldn't run without computers. I'm sure there's a computer in that camera over there, which I hope is a friendly camera. Camera, please be friendly. We deal with computers all the time. And if there are people in this room who haven't become involved, it really is a very good idea, because you can start out at a very low level. I notice a lot of people well up in the age stakes out there using them, but you can start out in computers at a low level and you can build up slowly, 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 and it's a good thing to practice them. There are various other things, talking about intelligence, that we can do to keep ourselves at the very peak mentally. People talk about playing cards, bridge rather than poker. A lot of people do Sudoku, a lot of people do crosswords. There's a lot written about spirituality and the benefit of the quiet moment, which can take place in a church, of course, as is often the case, or in myriad other ways. I think there's a special emphasis on yoga in the library here at the moment. That's one. Gardening is one. I talk in the book about building dry stone walls, which suits me, wouldn't suit everybody. But that communing with nature or any form of spirituality is a very good thing. And it's important in that being intelligent area to have a partnership with your doctor. A lot of people go to the doctor, take the pills, don't ask the doctor what it's all about, don't find out, and it's terribly important that you have a proper partnership with your doctor. Find out why you're being prescribed certain pills, what you can do to assist yourself. Some people in this room would know that you can take your own blood pressure more easily with a little machine you get from the chemist than you can check the tyre pressure on your car, because you can do it in your lounge room and you can't have the car in the lounge room. It's a lot easier, for me anyway, than boiling an egg. And there are all sorts of interactions that you can have with your medical professional or professionals whilst maintaining an intelligent approach to your life. The next chapter in the book is N for now, and the point behind that is you are all familiar with the expression, you are what you eat, but you also are what you ate 20, 25 years ago, and how you exercised and what have you. So now is the time to start looking after yourself physically, financially and in other ways. I was talking to Dr. Ross Walker, who is in favour of this red wine, well-known cardiologist, and he was saying recently that you ought to take vitamins, or if you want to take vitamins, you ought to start on a course of vitamins at least 15 years prior to your wanting to get the benefit of them. There's a portion in the book which talks about making arrangements about your residential, where you live. You ought to plan that a long way ahead. If you are intending to live to be 100, as I am, then you need to make sure that the house you live in has the doors widened, because I may not be as fit as 100 as I am now. Or you ought plan to move into some other sort of residential living without stairs or what have you. So looking ahead becomes very important. Eating, of course, you can change your approach to eating. There's an old saying you're all familiar with, that you, contrary to what we do, you ought eat like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper, I think is the third section of that. When you have more time on your hands, and the fourth chapter is tea for time, you can do those things. You may not be rushing off to work, or your volunteer work. Volunteer work is a very good thing for keeping you involved. I'm sure we have volunteers in the library here. There you are, I'm identifying with you already, it's we. I'm sure there are volunteers, as Paula is nodding her head. That's a great form of activity as well. But if you're not rushing off to meet a deadline, then you can breakfast that way, and you can have a smaller lunch and then a yet smaller supper, and do things that way. You have a little longer to do things. You don't have to go quite as flat out. You can spend time with your grandchildren. I have two little granddaughters, and on Father's Day they spent a couple of hours with me on my iPad, and taught me that I didn't know nearly as much about computers as I thought I had. I can't remember too much of what they told me because they were too quick. But we had a couple of cuddles, and it was all good fun. So you have an opportunity to use your time that isn't always available to you during your younger years. There's a quotation in the book: "Growing old is no more than a bad habit which a busy man has no time to form." So I'm in sympathy with that, because growing old has a connotation about it which is a bit down. The book resists the use of the word retire. If you look up your dictionary, retire has a negative or pejorative feeling. Go backward, cease to be active, all those sorts of things. I prefer the expression reorient. So if you are giving up full-time work, reorient yourself to gardening or dry stone walls or volunteering for the library here, or whatever it is. But reorient in the same way as you reoriented several times during your life, as you left school, as you perhaps got married, as you perhaps had children. Far more major reorientations than I am encouraging you to undertake as the years go by. The next chapter suggests that people should adapt to what's going on in life, and I've pretty much covered that in terms of what I've been talking about reorienting, about changing the way you go about things, doing things now. Procrastination is not only the thief of time, but with many people as they get older, it's a negative thing again. Putting off doing things means that there's a tendency to slow down, a tendency not to be involved, a tendency to lose confidence. So procrastination is not a good thing. The next chapter in the book is probably my favourite chapter, and it's G, and G is for goals. I have, I believe, invented the phrase the 3-tier rule, which is my view on the plan you should have to have something you plan to do today, tier 1, something you plan to do next week, tier 2 of course, and something you plan to do next month or sometime further in the future. So sometimes these things come to you spontaneously, of course, and you have plans that are dictated by your circumstances. But I was thinking about this last night because I was thinking about the book, and I thought to myself, well, tomorrow what do I have to look forward to? Of course, you know, coming here and speaking to you people about the book. Next week, what do I have to look forward to? Or on the weekend in this case, it's one of my daughter's birthday. So I'll see my daughter, my son-in-law and my 2 grandchildren, and they will teach me a bit more about the iPad with a bit of luck. So I'm looking forward to that. And in a couple of weeks' time, I've got to make up my mind whether I go to a legal conference in Marrakesh in February next year. So I'm looking forward to making up my mind about that. If I decide that that is a good idea, then of course that'll be something I can look forward to as a month or so hence for the next few months. So those goals, I believe, are very important because they keep people optimistic, they keep you mentally active as you're thinking about what will I do about that, what will I do about the other, and they're things you can share, of course. In my case, I share with my wife the fact that I'm doing this today, and she'll ask me how it went tonight and then ignore what I have to say. On the weekend, I will talk to the children and the grandchildren, and at a legal conference in the future, well, I'll have to write a paper, so that'll keep me active. But then I will share the experiences of the conference with the other lawyers there. So that's all constructive and good. One of the themes in the chapter on goals is don't be dull. Don't allow advancing age to dull you down. Be a little bit risque if you can, but certainly enjoy life. Enjoy the opportunities that come to you. Oscar Wilde once wrote, the only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. That might be good advice, depending on the temptation, I suppose. But at least think about it. You may not yield to it, but think about it. There's another quote in the book which is anonymous, and that one is to the effect that the trouble with resisting temptation is it may never come your way again. So again, it's probably worthwhile thinking about that. I have, not in this precise context, but at various stages, set myself goals for a year or longer. One stage, I decided, and this is where reading books is important, to read all the best known Australian authors, going right back to The Term of His Natural Life by Marcus Clarke, which would be in the library here, Henry Handel Richardson's book, which I can't think of now, but Henry was a lady, I remember that. Yes, a very well-known book, right up to more modern writers like Morris West and Peter Carey, and I read as many of those books as I could throughout the year. I enjoyed that very much. Another year I decided, because I've got 2 tin ears, to educate myself about various composers. So I went right back to Monteverdi and Vivaldi and came right through to the moderns. I learned 2 things, I think, as a result of that. One, I still have 2 tin ears, and secondly, I don't like Rachmaninoff at all. But the exercise was, I think, beneficial, and certainly I enjoyed it. As far as goals are concerned, there is in the book a quote from Sophia Loren, one of the great beauties of my childhood. Not quite as beautiful as Grace Kelly, but not bad looking. And she once said about goals, "I always have one more dream that is yet to come true. I am always looking forward to something." And if it's good enough for Sophia Loren, then it's good enough for me, as far as I'm concerned. The final chapter is E for eagles. I was introduced to the concept of ageing and eagles by the chap who was the CEO of Southern Cross Care, which is the retirement village organisation I referred to a couple of minutes ago. And he started to tell me about eagles one day, and I thought he was trying to tell me I was an eagle, but I worked out after a while he was trying to tell me he was an eagle. And the concept was that the eagles fly high and they oversee everything that's happening, and are strategists and too clever to do the manual bits and pieces. And he contrasted eagles with ducks, who are down on the ground, can't see the wood for the trees, and pecking away. The next time I saw this fellow, it had been his birthday, and his children gave him a tie with all sorts of little ducks all over it. But I must say he wore it proudly. So I think that's an important thing, to see ourselves as eagles, as the people who've developed the wisdom, who are the experts as to our own lives, who've developed the skills and ought to continue to use them. And on the topic of wisdom, there are 2 quotations at the end of the book. One I'll read more briefly, but it concerns the local vicar who saw Farmer Giles in the field, tilling the field, and the vicar, beg your pardon, came up to Giles and said, "Ah, Giles," looking at the beautiful field and the canola or whatever was growing in it. "Ah, Giles, you and the Lord have made a wonderful difference here." "Ah," said Giles, "you should have seen it when the Lord had it to himself." And the other one is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, an African Archbishop who used to be in the news a bit more frequently a few years ago, but is probably known to you. And what he says is, one of the greatest gifts we can give to another generation is our experience, our wisdom. And I think that's a nice note, and a nice note to end up on. Thank you very much.